In the week since news first broke of the federal indictment against Donald Trump, right around this time, last Thursday, one name has been brought up nearly just as often as the defendant himself, and that is of the judge assigned to the case, Judge Aileen Cannon. Lots of folks have wondered whether the Trump-appointed federal judge can truly run an impartial trial, particularly after she flagrantly ruled in favor of the ex-president during an early legal dispute over the classified documents last summer, a ruling that was so out of nowhere that it was quickly reversed by the appellate judges. But special counsel Jack Smith may have a backup plan. You see, while the Department of Justice charged Trump for illegally retaining the trove of classified documents he stole, he was not charged with disseminating those documents, even though prosecutors say he did just that twice at his New Jersey golf house. As lawyers Andrew Weissman and Ryan Goodman note in The Atlantic, Trump still could be charged with dissemination, especially if the special counsel's office believes Judge Cannon is putting her thumb on the scale again. Quote, if Aileen Cannon were to seek to pocket veto the charges before her by, say, scheduling the trial for after the 2024 presidential election, the special counsel will be able to sidestep her tactic by proceeding with charges in New Jersey. Mary McCord is the former acting assistant attorney general for national security at the Department of Justice. She is co-host of the Prosecuting Donald Trump podcast. Deborah Pearlstein is a professor at Cardozo School of Law. She recently wrote an essay the New York Times on the genius of leaving Trump's fate up to 12 ordinary Floridians. Both join me now. Deborah, let me start with you on that because it sort of gets to this question, right, of a fair shake and venue and doing it in Florida. What do you think about the Cannon conundrum, such as it is, and how to sort of think about it and having this trial in that judge's custody with a jury in Florida?
So thanks. It is a conundrum that the Justice Department is facing, but they've got to thread a remarkably narrow needle here in what they're trying to accomplish with this prosecution. They want to obviously see justice done. We all want to see that. But they're up against a clock. That is, this needs to be wrapped up or close before the 2024 election, or at least before the former president is reelected again, which remains a possibility. And they have to do this in a way that not only does justice, but contributes to the perception that justice is being done in a case that is this incredibly politically fraught. The risks, not just for the outcome of the case, but for the system more broadly, are enormously high. Going to Florida in the first place eliminates some risks. They were facing a risk that, for example, venue would be challenged if the case was brought in Washington, D.C. The Justice Department might well have actually prevailed ultimately, but it certainly would have been litigated. The former president would have been able to appeal. That takes time. Bringing it in Florida short circuits that process. And if the Justice Department can prevail there, it has a Florida verdict, a better chance than other options of potentially being taken seriously if it's just a bunch of ordinary Florida citizens than does a verdict rendered by a jury in what is typically considered a bluer state like New York, New Jersey, Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I mean, on the sort of New Jersey part of this, Mary, so there's two things here. First, let's just talk about the charging document. And the indictment as read, right, does have a little bit of a weird Bedminster mystery to it. Because stuff is clearly going to Bedminster. Like, he's packing up enough boxes that apparently his wife calls up Walt Nauta to be like, please, no, don't bring the boxes on the plane, right? So the boxes are going to Bedminster. We know we have in the indictment 2 times, right, showing the map to the guy from the super PAC and the other, you know, the nuclear secrets or the plan for Iran, right? In both those cases, that's happening at Bedminster, and yet Bedminster is never searched. It's not charged there. Like, so what do you make of that to begin with?
Well, I think that probably Jack Smith thought it was important to include these allegations in the indictment, just as a part of the storytelling of this, right? And to also signify the significance of this, because even though he did not charge dissemination of classified information or national defense information, to be more precise, based on this statute that was used, it helps to tell the story of what all was going on from the time Mr. Trump left the White House on January 20th through that search through the execution of the search warrant. And that included not only obstructing the investigation by removing boxes, sorting through them, and not putting boxes back in the storage room where his attorney came to search for classified information, and misleading his attorney about that, but it also included dissemination. But it would have been more challenging to charge those dissemination counts in Florida because, as you just indicated, and as the indictment reflects, they were shown to people in Bedminster. Now, there's a theory of a continuing offense if the documents originated in Mar-a-Lago. I mean, they originated in D.C., went to Mar-a-Lago, then went to Bedminster. There's a theory there. But again, just as Deborah said, it could have delayed things because there would have been motions to change venue on those counts in Florida. The other thing that could be going on is, it's unclear from this indictment whether the department has all of the evidence it would need to prove up dissemination. In other words, does it have that document that he was showing? Do we really have it showing either to the two people who were working on Mark Meadows' autobiography or to the political action committee leader? And so, there's still some things we don't know, but it is certainly possible that if something goes awry in Florida, it's certainly possible Jack Smith, if he does have that evidence, could bring a case probably relatively quickly in New Jersey.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess so the question of can you bring that is different than this sort of broader institutional question that Deborah, you're getting at here, right? Which just strikes me as we're talking about this line, right? You want to zealously prosecute this. You also want to do it in a way that projects at all times fair play, no dirty pool, and not necessarily because you're going to insulate yourself from criticism from Donald Trump and his his cronies. That's going to happen anyway. But it is as a sort of almost testament to the thing you're trying to preserve, Deborah, right? I mean, sort of like theory and practice as one in how you go about doing this.
It's really true. And the prosecutor here, interestingly, has prosecuted cases in more than one venue. He's not only prosecuted cases in the U.S. justice system, he's prosecuted international war crimes cases as well. And in both cases, and in here, in the United States, with a case of this kind of political salience, an unprecedented case in U.S. history of a former prosecution, it's more like we see in other countries where there's a risk of, does this look like a politicized prosecution?
Right. That's a great point.
The criticisms we hear are not dissimilar from criticisms you hear in other countries when you face things like this. And he has to be, and I'm sure he is, cognizant of those and working to avoid them to the extent he can.
That's a very astute point. I mean, war crimes prosecutions have been called victor's justice since back to Nuremberg, right? When Chief Justice Robert Jackson was prosecuting them overseas. There's some more New York Times reporting on the boxes, Mary, that I think speaks to, just how obsessed the guy appears to be with the contents and how much this is the opposite of what you would normally claim in this case. Like, if anything happened to my papers, I would be like, I have no idea. Like, I literally, I don't know where my papers are. I don't know what's in any box. Like, honestly, I swear to you. This is the opposite here. Here's the New York Times. Shortly after John Kelly took over Trump's chief of staff, Kelly and other aides grew concerned that some documents for likely presidential records might go missing if they were kept in the residence. They impressed upon him the papers had to be tracked, but he was not especially interested. Aides started examining the boxes to check for presidential records, but Trump still found ways to bring items to the residence. The boxes began to multiply. He could point to specific boxes he wanted to take with him on Air Force One when he was traveling and declined to take others, appearing aware of the contents inside the boxes he chose. What do you think the significance of that is?
Well, it's interesting because remember, even when he was in office, there was reporting that his aides said how difficult it was to keep him from, first of all, taking classified information back to his office, but also if he didn't like something, he ripped it up and they would have to tape it together because it was an official record. So this is part of his modus operandi, I think. And it's interesting because, we've talked before about what was his motive here. Why did he retain these classified documents? documents at Mar-a-Lago? Why did he carry them with him everywhere? And, we've speculated about potential, use of monetizing of these or using them as leverage in his own business relationships or potentially with foreign governments or foreign companies. But it's also quite possible that it was just purely his weird attachment. His own employee, as alleged in the indictment, called these the beautiful mind boxes, that he has this weird attachment to things. And, it sounds a little bit like that's a petty and not a significant motive, but it could be that there are other motives as well. But it definitely seems there's a lot of support for the fact that he really he felt like these were his. He wanted to keep them. He didn't want to give them up.
He's on Truth Social within the hour, all caps demanding they return the papers to him. So still focus on that. Mary McCord and Deborah Pearlstein, thank you both.